Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace. This is another Spawn Daily episode. We're here to talk about issue number 55. Once again, I'm joined by author of the Spawn reading order that we're using, Blake Whitlow. Blake, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I love it.
Yeah, don't forget, everybody, the reading order that we're using is in the show notes. Blake put it together. I decided that we were going to sort of fold in some of the other series and one-shots and whatnot. So I'm not going to go into more detail because, I talk about it almost every episode. So needless to say, we're still going to continue to do the regular series, one issue per episode, but we're also going to fold in some of the other stuff from time to time. So just be aware and definitely go and check out the reading order if you want to know what's coming up, what we're going to talk about, and if you want more of a full Spawn experience in terms of the reading order. So that being said, let's dive into the issue. Really interesting issue in a lot of ways that we're going to talk about today, issue number 55. And in a way, something that's sort of unique about the whole series of Spawn, the whole concept of Spawn, that I think not enough people really talk about. In light of recent world events, it's a little strange to be talking about some of these things that we're going to cover in the next couple of issues. And I do encourage everybody to go, as you heard at the beginning of the episode with the bumper, but also if you check the pinned tweet at the top of our Twitter feed, you'll see that there is a link there. You can go and donate to UNICEF, which is a great cause to help out the refugees from Ukraine. So as you can see from that awesome Capullo cover that I'm sharing with you right now, it's not about using the hellspawn power for Al Simmons in this issue. It's very much what he's comfortable with. We saw it early on in issue 7, like we mentioned last episode, where Al went and stole some weapons, some hardware, more along the lines of ordnance that he was used to using when he was a CIA assassin. So it does a couple things when you think about it in terms of, hey, why would Al do this when he has all these magical hellspawn powers? Well, it has to do with what he's comfortable with and what he's been used to using, and also the fact that he has a finite amount of that power that he was given by Malbolgia from Hell. And so if he can accomplish it with more conventional weapons, I think that's what he's more comfortable doing. And we'll see that in this issue, and we certainly see it on the cover there.
You're completely right. He was a lieutenant colonel in the armed forces, and he was part of the CIA. He was a field operative. He ran black ops missions all the time. We've seen time and time again throughout the series flashbacks and panels of him during his missions and things like that. He is very good with the weapons that he's most familiar with. So it would make sense that even in this new state of being, that would still be like what he's best at, what he's most familiar with, what he's most comfortable with. He's still acclimating to this new life, this new environment. He's still getting used to having the suit and having these powers. He's still very much a novice in that. Like, he's getting better where he's at now, but he's still not quite a master of it. So it makes more sense that he would fall back to the things that he's most comfortable with, the thing that he knows that will get the job done the fastest, the most efficiently, instead of banking on these magic powers that he has that he doesn't have quite all control of yet.
Yeah, and we've seen when he's used the power, specifically teleporting, it incapacitates him for a little while. And so, yeah, like, why would you not, go with what you know?
He's still figuring out the rules and everything, and
Yep.
It's unpredictable.
Yep, 100%. So inside the front cover, we see Todd McFarlane's story, Greg Capullo pencils, McFarlane and Danny Miki on inks, Tom Orzechowski, copy editor and letters, Brian Haberlin, Dan Kemp on colors. Quick recap of last time. Again, at the end of 52, Al had the dream, or Terry rather had the dream of Al being Spawn, being alive. Last issue, Terry went searching in the very dangerous alleys, Rat City and whatnot, and Cog intercepted and saved Terry from being accosted by a couple of homeless guys, took him to see, or directed him to go find Spawn, and then Cog ended up having to mediate that encounter just because it was time for Al to fly off in a jealous rage about the fact that he feels Terry's, betrayed him and is living the life that Al should have lived. So Terry stated his case. Cog backed him up. Terry recruited Al to come to Terry's office and show him the proof that he had accumulated that says, hey, Jason Winn's messing with me. He's messing with Wanda. I need your help to stop him. And Al agreed. So that's where this issue picks up. And we did also see Sam and Twitch waiting at the waterfront for some informant who supposedly has more information about the Chief Banks, Senator Jennings conspiracy. So as this issue starts, we're back in Rat City, and as Al's taking a look at some information that Terry's brought on his laptop, Terry's sort of snooping around in the lair, if you will, of Al Simmons as Spawn, and he's like, man, this place is a horror show, and Al's been like living in this and thriving in this. And as Al continues, making comments on the information that he sees, hey, he's in Iraq, he's selling weapons here, he's selling weapons there. Terry's snooping around, he comes across the worms, which, that many worms in one place acting the way they're acting, which isn't necessarily normal.
It raises questions.
Yeah, it talks about how they're like creeping up his pant leg, and how it reminds them of the way ants behave. That's not how worms aren't a hive mind the way, ants are a colony. Worms are, a little more solitary than that. And so as they are climbing up his pant leg, he gets creeped out. He kind of shakes them off and follows their trail when they're in this garbage dumpster. And we've seen in the past, this is where dead bodies have gone. The worms go in, they suck up whatever energies left over from the potential for evil that these people had in their living lifetime, and then that energy is what feeds the symbiotic costume that Al wears. So you can imagine when Terry opens this up, there's thousands of these worms in there, and he sees a desiccated hand sticking up out of them. And when Spawn turns around and sees this, he yells at him, "Don't touch him!" You understand? Like he really loses it. He really freaks out. And you can tell that Terry's like, what, dude, calm down. Like, what's going on? And
like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you liked worms so much. My bad.
And I feel like, obviously you can understand Terry's confusion. But I feel like part of the reason that Al reacts so strongly isn't just out of, okay, yes, I need the energy of the sustenance that these worms provide my symbiote to kind of exist. So, it's a question of survival, but also I think it's shame. I think that Al feels so much shame for his existence, for who he is and how he has to live. And here's a guy who knew him from before, right? So it's even worse than if it was just some stranger. Because Al, and we talked about it last time, how he is so kind of macho and doesn't like to show emotion, doesn't like to show weakness. So, he's very proud. And for him to have to rely on something as disgusting as worms, I think there's some shame there. And I think that kind of colors, at least, maybe I'm reading into it. Maybe McFarlane didn't think that, but that's the impression I get, that there's a level of, yeah, I don't want you to have to know about all this gross stuff. And even says to Terry, I said I'd work with you, and it's not going to be easy. There's going to be some awkwardness. So let's just focus on Winn and bringing him to justice. But
he immediately tries to change the subject.
Yeah.
I really like the way that you read that, because when I read it the first time years ago, I don't think that it came across that way to me. But I love going through this series again now and being like, oh yeah, you're completely right. Like there absolutely is going to be a level of shame because he's so proud, because he had, like these certain ideas of who he was supposed to be, and now all of that's gone. So he's got to try and hold on to like what things, what values he thought that were most important. And that's probably one of the reasons why he's so macho and everything. And there's absolutely going to be like a level of shame. I need these worms to draw power from in order to sustain myself. That's kind of weird. And I don't think he wants to be judged.
Yeah, and then it continues with, I mean, even though, Al does try to change the subject, hey, let's focus on Winn. Um, I think a lot of the questions that Terry's asking here are questions that Al knows that he needs answers to, but he's put them on the back burner. He's either asked them and when he's started to search them out, he doesn't like what he'll find. So he turns a blind eye to them because he does know, Cagliostro has admitted that, hey, I'm a spawn just like you, but Al hasn't pursued it, at least not that we've seen, because Terry asked, hey, who is this Cagliostro guy? He knew things about me that nobody should know. And Spawn's like, well, I don't know who he is. He just knows things, and that's just the way it is. So
drinks and he knows things.
Yeah. Cagliostro, he knows things, and he just does. So let's not worry about that. Let's find my weapons. They're buried around here some way. And Terry's like, well, you don't, like, again, don't you want to know the answers? Don't you want to understand? Like, because I do. You're taller, you're bigger, you have power from who knows where. You were dead for 5 years, now you're back. You disappeared. You fake your own death. He wants answers. And again, Al doesn't want to give it to him. Yeah. He screams at him. He's like, I'm dead. Do you not get it? Hell's not playing games, Terry. Like, I'm in a bad place. This is not even my body. My body's buried. You guys buried it, right? So don't tell me how you're suffering and Wanda's suffering, whatever. I get it, but I'm dead. And so, again, you can see both sides. You can see why Al wouldn't have a lot of patience for Terry's questions. You can see why he's avoiding asking the questions himself. You do feel bad. I mean, he is dead, but at the same time, it's a little self-centered, like, because Terry has a point, like, this is all their lives.
Al owes those answers to Terry and Wanda. He, especially after everything that he's put them through by stealing those weapons and putting Terry and Wanda in this dangerous situation, you think that Al would be like, okay, after everything that I inadvertently caused to, hurt your guys' lives, you deserve to ask some questions and get some answers. You think that that's kind of where he would be, but he's still kind of a self-centered dick right now. He's only thinking about himself.
Well, I mean, you can flip it around, right? Like, what he's saying is, as bad as you and Wanda think you have it, at least you're not dead. You're better off,
And he is dead. He's in a rough situation. He's got daily threats, like life-ending threats coming at him all the time. So he does have it rough.
You can flip it around and you can say, yeah, Al, you're already dead. So in a way, Terry and Wanda do have it worse because they still have something to lose. So you can definitely see it from both sides. But it ends up Al kind of dismissing Terry, saying, if you think you're confused, welcome to the club. I found my weapons, we'll meet up later. And Terry wanders off to go back home, kind of lost in his own thoughts. And it ends up that a couple of the bums that accosted him earlier end up having to save him from a third guy. Like, word has gone out that Terry's a friend of Spawn. Nobody should be touching him, but it's homeless. It's transient. There's always new people coming in that may not be aware. So it is interesting that Terry now is sort of, he's a made man in the mafia that is Spawn in a lot of ways.
He's in the Spawn mafia.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
He's a made guy. So meanwhile, we check in on Jason Winn. He's meeting with a couple of let's say ne'er-do-wells in terms of some guys who want weapons. Again, we know that CIA always back dealing, always shady deals with different warlords and different powers that be around the globe. So Winn's doing what he always does, which is what's best for Jason Winn, selling weapons, pocketing the proceeds. And we're told 40 minutes later, a deal's closed. And as distrustful as everybody else is, Winn knows that can take the profits from this transaction and turn around and use them to curry some favor in Japan. He's always looking out for himself. When the clown shows up and says, "Hey, surprise! You're doing a great job. I thought only demons were manipulative, man, but you're the best." And Winn's assuring him, "Hey, Spawn will be dealt with soon." So clear that the clown violator is still keeping an eye on Winn. Winn hasn't forgotten about Spawn, and Winn, despite the fact that he knows somebody's snooping around. He doesn't know it's Terry. He still continues to do what he's going to do. I don't think he can even help himself. He's sort of a victim of his own nature. So meanwhile, Terry and Spawn have come up with a plan to figure out what Winn is doing. They need proof. They need actual physical proof that the weapons are where they're supposed to be, and they are what they're not. Like it's supposed to be a certain type of thing that's supplied to a certain place at a certain time, and it has a paper trail that can be traced back to Jason Winn, but then it turns out the weapons are not what they're supposed to be, so they need some concrete proof. So Spawn ends up hiding out in the belly of a plane for 18 hours, and it heads toward the Republic of Serbia. Spawn jumps out, and this is the fascinating part. It's Al Simmons getting to do what Al Simmons did best, and it's basically what the narration tells us. He gets to feel more like more like himself than he has ever since his return. This is what he used to do. This is what he was good at. And the part about it that's fascinating for me is this is a story about this supernatural hellspawn with magical powers that is all about fantastical ideas of heaven and hell and good and evil and chains and spikes and great art and what have you. And McFarlane overlays that because that is super fantastical. You couldn't really call it science fiction. It very much is either fantasy in terms of genre, and definitely with some horror elements, right? And a lot of old fantasy, it had a lot of horror elements. Talk about Brothers Grimm and that sort of thing. So it's very much in that vein. Now overlay that with some of like the most realistic fictional storytelling in terms of like war comics, political intrigue, a lot of weapons and backdealing and military and just all that sort of hyper realistic sense of fiction that we get like in a Tom Clancy novel, right? Like where it's a real world political intrigue and if things had happened a certain way, it could have gone this way, Hunt for Red October, all that kind of stuff. Like these two genres are so like far apart. And that's what's so interesting to me. I don't think enough people talk about Spawn as something that is a melding of two genres that aren't typically, mashed together. And so I want to point that out. And again, in light of when we're recording this and what's going on in the world, it hits a little close to home as well. So I find that to be interesting. But irrespective of that, we do see Al, as I said, doing what he does best, infiltrating this base as Terry is back in his office, kind of running the ops side of it for him, giving him information. yeah, exactly. So again, all the dialogue here, all the exposition is all about how Al just feels like he's doing what he was born for, and he's so effective at it, and he's even more effective now that he has the the powers and the abilities of a hellspawn. So it's not too long before he's able to infiltrate into the warehouse, and that scene is really cool that Capullo gives us, where Spawn is just weighed down, and it goes back to what Blake and I were talking about at the top of the episode, where man, he doesn't need all this stuff with the abilities that he has, but this is what makes him feel safe. This is what makes him feel comfortable, being armed to the teeth with grenades and bandoliers and rocket launchers and guns. And yeah, it's a fantastic image. And it very much is the visual equivalent of what I was just talking about, the melding together of two really crazy genres. So fantastic
action spy thriller, but also a supernatural horror superhero.
Yeah, exactly.
How did those two things mix well? Well, I don't know, but Todd McFarlane figured it out.
He did, and he makes it work, and it's fantastic. So yeah, I mean, this just as easily would be a fantastic story if you took out the supernatural elements, and this was like a flashback to an old mission that Al Simmons went on, and Terry again was his contact back home. Like it works on that level. It's just interesting. So Once Spawn gets in the warehouse, he does a little investigating. Everything looks above board. They're like, wait, what's going on? Everything is what it's supposed to be. We don't see any of the illegal weapons. Could we have been wrong? And then Spawn takes a closer look and he realizes that these crates marked grenades are much bigger in size than they would be for the amount of grenades that are supposed to be there. So sure enough, when he cracks one open, all of these guns come flooding out, and it's the proof that they've been looking for. And so Terry orders them out of there pronto, like, okay, we have everything we need. We have the proof that we need. But Spawn's not about to leave, despite Terry's, protestations. Spawn decides, Al decides he's going to get some revenge. So I think this is part of the angst that he feels, as well as he doesn't have to worry so much about the consequences, going back to this idea that he's already dead. Mm-hmm. So he wants some revenge. He's hoping that if he blows this stash up, it's going to cause some uncomfortable questions and bring some more of the spotlight onto Jason Winn. And so he leaves an explosive, he blows it up, and then we get a scene of the talking heads, and they all basically say what I was just talking about, how, yeah, there was this explosion and there's rumblings that the CIA was involved, and with some illegal weapons, and there's a lot of questions being asked because where would this ordnance have come from? Could the United States have sold it to them? Did it fall off the back of a truck? Like, what exactly is going on? So meanwhile, back at Jason Winn's office, he thinks he's insulated from this. He's a smart guy, and he always has many layers between himself and what actually happens on the ground. And so he's talking to the ambassador of that nation where everything blew up, and the ambassador is saying, what am I supposed to do now? I don't have the weapons that I was promised so that I could sell them to my partner. You're probably going to be dead within 72 hours. And Wynn's like, well, I'm sorry. I didn't create your enemies. I upheld he's washing his hands. And he's like, I didn't create your enemies. I upheld my end of the bargain. And the ambassador's like, no, you didn't, but you've created some of your own, because one of the soldiers was saved from that explosion by some red cloaked ghost. And my man said that all that ghost said repeatedly as he was hauling him to safety was, Jason Winn, Jason Winn, Jason Winn. And my man, right before he died, said it was the devil himself. So whatever this is that you're involved in, Winn, whatever happened because of you. And I don't like being caught in your personal wars, and others are going to hear about this. So basically this ambassador is saying, yeah, I might take it on the chin. I might not be around in 3 days because of what happened here. But everybody around the world is going to know that if they do business with you, Jason Winn, that they're going to have to worry about this red ghost. So the act of blowing up the warehouse had exactly the effect that Al Simmons hoped it would. So meanwhile, back in Terry's office, he's yelling at Spawn, like, why'd you do that? Do you have any idea what you started? And Spawn says, yeah, hopefully a domino effect that's going to lead right back to the source. And Terry's like, yeah, but you blew up our evidence. What were you thinking? And Al's like, well, don't worry. I kept a few souvenirs. And we see that he grabbed a couple of those guns. But again, how can you prove that they were there in that warehouse? He blew it up. Yeah, I mean, he's not thinking, I think, in a lot of ways.
It's a combination of things. I think still, he's very impulsive.
Yeah.
He's living from moment to moment. And so it was impulsive of him to steal the weapons all the way back in issue number 6 to fight Overt Kill. And that it was very impulsive of him now to blow up all of their evidence on the hope that it would somehow start a domino effect that would push Winn to do something or something. It's a bit of a stretch to say that Spawn planned this all along and he knew exactly how it was gonna pan out. I don't think he's quite the mastermind that he thinks he is right now, but it is yielding the a kind of effect like you were saying. People are going to know that if they deal with Winn, that they're going to have to deal with this red ghost. So just because it turned out well for him now doesn't mean that he should be this impulsive and do all these things. because now they can't legitimately go after him because the evidence is gone. They have to find more evidence now. So they have to just bank on the hope that Winn is going to run aground not having any business partners.
Yeah, and again, I think it goes back to, I mean, we look at the contrast of the way that Terry Fitzgerald sees it and the way Spawn sees it. What would be interesting is if we did have an example of a similar mission when Al Simmons was still alive, and what would he have done in the same situation? So basically what I'm saying is the fact that he's already dead, and so like I was saying earlier, that's not a risk. He doesn't have to worry about being killed. He's already dead.
Yeah.
So does that color his actions? You know,
I think it might. I think it
does. Or is it just that he was always impulsive and he always would have done this? So yeah, I mean, Terry is like, I got to try to do things by the book and play within the rules of society and life because I'm still alive. And Spawn's just like, I just want to take out Jason Winn regardless.
I think it's a combination of things, like there's a bit of, this is who he was before mixed in there, but it's also, he doesn't care anymore. He just wants to hurt Winn in whatever way possible, and he's not thinking ahead. Yep. The best way to hurt Winn would be to, do what Terry's trying to do, get that evidence, build up a case, bring him down, ruin his empire.
Winn is so powerful, though, that, I mean, we've seen it before when when Sam and Twitch took all the info to the press, and all it ended up implicating was Chief Banks. Like, he's so powerful. Could he possibly, end up shifting the blame onto somebody else? So I can see both sides, but we'll have to see how it all plays out. I will say that final image from Todd McFarlane, or from Greg Capullo rather, is awesome. I especially like it almost looks like an old school Western 6-shooter there in his holster. But yeah, like that previous full page spread that we talked about, mixing genres. I mean, this does it super awesome as well. Just seeing Spawn, this creature with spikes and chains and magical powers, just holding all this high-tech weaponry. I mean, it's fantastic. Fantastic image to end it on. Love the moon in the background with the craters and the detail. Really inspired. So I think once again, unlike last issue where we didn't have a lot of outright action, it was more an emotional issue. This one had a ton of action.
Yeah. From
creepy worms to, blowing up weapons, and Spawn fighting some of the soldiers that came across him in the warehouse. This issue was fantastic. This is one of my favorite issues that we've covered so far throughout the series. So
I love that Terry and Spawn are on a team. This whole time, Spawn has been on his own. Yeah, Cog comes in and he gives him some advice and kicks him in the butt, like, hey, get off your ass and do something. But now it feels like there's some partnership. Al isn't on this by himself. He knows that he's got Terry and they can work together on these things, on these problems. So I love that he's starting to make friends instead of enemies.
Yeah, but did he blow it all up by, like, literally blow it all up by destroying the evidence? We'll have to wait and see. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it.
Period.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Any last thoughts, Blake, as we wind it down?
Nah.
All right, everybody. That's going to do it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it as always. Join us tomorrow when we talk about the next issue number 56, which is fantastic in its own right. Some really, really, really cool art. So we hope you all join us. We appreciate your support and for you guys listening as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Later.